We got injury updates to discuss here on Saints Now by Chat Sports. Kellen Moore and these players have both given us some updates, so we're going to dive on in. Taliese Fuaga is dealing with a high ankle sprain. Alvin Kamara dealing with an ankle injury, but added a knee injury this week against the Falcons. So if you want more news, updates, and information around your favorite team, daily videos right here on Saints Now by Chat Sports, so be sure to subscribe. Injury update on Taliese Fuaga to start things off. I want to first say, all things considered, it's probably a good thing that the New Orleans Saints didn't force Taliese Fuaga back on the field. He's been dealing with the high ankle sprain over the last handful of weeks, and he did return to practice before the Week 12 game, however, was ruled inactive. We saw him as a non-participant and then upgrade to a limited participant throughout the week on the injury report, but Taliese Fuaga said his injury, it was very achy. Certain movements didn't feel really good, so that's ultimately why he did not play. And I also think that this is a good thing for the New Orleans Saints because you didn't force him back. You didn't make him potentially risk further injury, give him a little bit extra time to recover, so that way he can be ready to roll and be ready to play at a high level whenever he is healthy. Hopefully that is soon, but for right now it seems like it's going to be a little bit of a week-to-week situation. We're going to monitor it, and we'll know more throughout the week as practice and injury reports come out on Wednesday. Now, this is a positive update for Taliese Fuaga, all things considered. He did deal with a similar injury when he was with Oregon State back in college, and he did say that whenever it came to that injury, this helped him rehabbing it this time around. Shout out to Matthew Peras, who did an awesome write-up around this. I highly encourage you to go check it out. But for the offensive line, this is a much better unit whenever you have Taliese Fuaga in the mix. Awesome Richards did start on the right tackle position last week against the Atlanta Falcons, and you saw the pass rush for Atlanta cause a lot of problems. The defensive line spent a lot of time in the backfield for New Orleans, and it's really, really frustrating that the Saints were unable to have a game plan and were unable to effectively stop the Falcons' defensive line. But when you have Kelvin Banks and Taliese Fuaga on the field, that is a really, really nice unit in my personal opinion. I think the Saints did upgrade at the guard position, by the way, when they traded away Trevor Penning. Dylan Radins, I think, is fine. Luke Fortner, he's not Eric McCoy, but he's serviceable to say the least. And Cesar Ruiz, very frustrating, to be totally honest. He needs to get off this roster as soon as possible. The Saints do not need to bring him back next year. He's very, very frustrating. It feels like the interior of the offensive line is where most of these problems are coming. And I did tweet this out during the game, or after the game, I should say. It was really, really frustrating to know that the second there's a few injuries or one injury or anything happens to the offensive line, the entire offense just goes straight to shit. Like, it really is frustrating. You can't get anything going offensively. And some of that is the play calling. Some of that is the lack of weapons and the lack of talent. Large part of that is also on the offensive line for not giving running backs lanes, not giving Tyler Shuck protection and opportunities to throw the ball, not giving the receivers time to get downfield and get open. Like, I really do have a lot of faith in the tackles positions, and I really like the future with your bookend tackles being Kelvin Banks and Taliese Fuaga. I think that's a nice duo right there, and I personally would not like to spend prime draft capital on an offensive tackle again this year, or an offensive lineman for that matter at all. I know that it's a big need, but when it comes to the tackle position, you're good there. I think that those two guys are your bookend tackles as long as they stay healthy. Now, the interior offensive line, that's where the things really start to rise. And for me, I am kind of tired of drafting and developing O-line. I'd like to just go ahead and buy a nice line as soon as possible. And that's not going to be able to happen all the way across the board because the New Orleans Saints do have to spend money elsewhere and fill roster holes because they have so many. You also have to consider their cap space next year. But I think that it's much smarter for the Saints to invest in the guard position and bring in some new guys rather than paying what they have or drafting players and just hoping they develop and trying to see if it works out. I'm over it. I would like to just pay for a good offensive line and let's just go out there and fix everything. It would help the red zone issues. It would help the offensive productivity just in general. So positive updates for Taliese Fuaga. I still think the majority of the issues for the O-line, though, are on the interior side. Now we're going to talk about Alvin Kamara and his injury update coming up next because Kellen Moore did speak about that. But first things first, got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. This episode of Saints Now by Chat Sports brought to you by the best daily fantasy sports app, and that is Prize Picks, my favorite way to spend game day. These Saints games are so tough to watch, and to be totally honest, the only way to get a spark is watching my team get blown out, but making some money while playing Prize Picks. The holiday season is the absolute best time of the year for sports. You got bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, and it's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day on what gifts to buy, what to eat, and which games to watch, there's only one place where it feels good to be right, and that's Prize Picks. My favorite thing about Prize Picks is picking multiple sports in the same lineup. With basketball back, I can now pick Derek Queen and Tyler Shuck to pop off in the same lineup and root for both. And new feature alert, wee woo, wee woo, Prize Picks now has early payouts. You heard that right. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Now for Turkey Day on Thanksgiving, if you need an idea and some inspiration on how Prize Picks works, I'm going to go with the quarterback lineup from each game on Thanksgiving. Jared Goff, going to take the more on his passing yards. Patrick Mahomes, also going to take the more on his because I feel like Patty Mahomes is going to put on a show on a holiday. And Joe Burrow hasn't been known to bounce back immediately when he returns to games. However, I do think he'll have a good game, but I'm going to take the less on his passing yards. If you want to fade these picks, if you want to tail the picks, don't care what you do, just make sure you do it on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to Prize Picks, where it's always good to be right. Click the link in the comments or description of this video to get started today. Now, in terms of an injury update on Alvin Kamara, we also broke this down on an early morning edition of Saints Now. We had Overreaction Monday and some news, and then we got into the Justin Tucker update, so this is the third time we've put out some content today. Hey, we're out hustling everyone, I'll guess. Shout out to Nick Underhill for giving us this update yesterday. I made a short about it, gave you some quick insights, so not going to spend too much time talking about what we already know. But in terms of Alvin Kamara, it's an MCL sprain. It could take a little bit of time. Nothing super serious, nothing threatening long-term, and we're going to have to see what happens, but it seems like he avoided major injury, so early signs are positive for Alvin Kamara. Now, Kellen Moore was directly asked about this situation by media during his press conference on Monday, and here's what he said. Kind of stuttered a little bit, adding a little context here. He answered and then kind of shifted really quick. He said he'll be out for, we'll see if he's available this week. It's kind of like one of those things. If he's available, awesome. If not, Devin I, I thought did an awesome job hopping in there and competing. Now, the injury news for Alvin Kamara, it is deflating, and it is something that I would like to see get resolved sooner rather than later. Lopez even earlier said, is this the end of Alvin Kamara? I don't necessarily know, but I can tell you this is a huge hit to an offense that already struggles to create offensive productivity and explosive plays. You lose yet another explosive piece to that side of the football. And with Alvin Kamara, he's obviously dealing with the injury. So Devin Neal and Audric Estime are your two players on the roster right now. You have Evan Hull on the practice squad. Kellen Moore also said that they're going to be working out players and looking elsewhere to potentially address this position as well as wide receiver. He says they're always looking for that. But when it comes to how the Saints move forward in the future, first of all, stop force feeding Taysom Hill. Second of all, keep handing the ball to Devin Neal. I thought that he provided a nice spark to the team against Atlanta, and I think that whenever he's gotten on the field and had some touches, he starts to get going, and you saw him really start to get the thing rolling, and then they put Taysom Hill in, or then they take him off the field. I don't know why. And I thought that Devin Neal provided some really nice juice to the passing game. I thought that he was a very reliable option as a check down target for Tyler Shuck. He was able to create some yardage on most of those plays. In terms of his rushing yards, I know that it wasn't anything that pops off the screen, but I thought he ran really, really hard, and I think that he's a player who deserves and should be getting more touches, especially considering this Alvin Kamara injury as well. Like, I'm not saying anything against Otter Estime, but you really got to consider giving Devin I a ton of carries moving forward. And you got to see what you have in this player, because I think that running back is a need moving forward for this team. And to be totally honest, I don't hate the idea of a high-end running back like a Jeremiah Love and Devin Neal on this team in the future of this offense. I think that's very, very bright, but you need to get more information. You need to learn more about Devin Neal. And to be totally honest, he's a player that I want to see more of. And I think he's a player that the Who Dat Nation and can get excited about, because he's just another rookie that is providing a little bit of extra juice to the team. Now, in terms of the rushing attack as a whole, I know this is kind of redundant to say, and it's kind of tough to have this conversation, because it's like, well, no shit, this offense needs to find a way to get the rushing attack moving. They're terrible on the ground. The offensive line is bad. The play calling isn't amazing. The talent just isn't necessarily there. I don't really know what to make of this season. I just think that when it comes to the rushing attack, it's been extremely underwhelming, especially considering the high-end talent of Alvin Kamara. Of course, Kendre Miller's dealing with an injury, and he's out for the season. But, like, it just that part of the offense needs to find a way to get operating at a high level, because then it'll open up the offense for everyone else, and it'll take a lot of pressure off of Tyler Shuck. You saw that was a recipe for success against Carolina. The rushing attack, very prominent. Against Atlanta, it was non-existent, and we saw how both of those games went. Now, if you're tired of the injuries, if you're tired of the bad vibes, and you're tired of this team just having all sorts of problems, type F injuries in the comments, please and thank you. I need the injury bug out of New Orleans. I appreciate you guys for rocking and rolling with us here on this edition of Saints Now by Chat Sports. Quick synopsis on the video. We got injury updates on Taliese Fuaga and Alvin Kamara. For Fuaga, he's dealing with the high ankle sprain. He did not play last week because he felt achy, but he feels like he's recovering faster than he did in college. So for Taliese Fuaga, maybe we'll see him back this week. Kellen Moore said for Alvin Kamara, if he's available this week, that's awesome. If not, Devin Neal will be getting a lot of touches. And, he'll probably be out for some time with his knee injury as well as an ankle injury. My name is Trizzy Trace Gerard. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Y'all stay golden, and we'll see you next time.